We want to call the meeting of state government to order, and if the clerk would please take the roll.
Representatives Alexander, Bricken, Butler, Carringer, Chisholm, Dixie, Haston, Holsclaw, Hurt, Jernigan, Johnson, Leatherwood, Littleton, McCalman, Miller, Pearson, Powell, Powers, Rudder, Terry, Vice Chair Eldridge,
Here.
Vice Chairman Kiesling. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started today, I have a couple of things. And first off, our Chairman Kiesling had a long-standing doctor's appointment today, so you kind of got stuck with me on this today. He will be back with us at the helm next week, and we anxiously look forward to that. And also, I would like to welcome a new member to the committee, Representative Pearson. He has joined us here, and we're glad to have him on board. So with that, if there's any members that have any personal orders, seeing none, we'll get started into our agenda. And the first item up is HJR 760. And I'm going to be handing off the gavel to Speaker Johnson and make an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are recognized on HJR 760.
Mr. Crosland, go ahead and have a seat there if you don't care. And I have the honor today to introduce to the committee Mr. John Crosland. And
we have a motion and a second.
Thank you. And Mr. Crosland is up for the confirmation of his reappointment to the Lottery Board. And Mr. Crosland serves as a co-managing principal of regional accounting and consulting firm Crosland, more than 20 years of public accounting experience. John's audit, tax, and company leadership have led to record growth and numerous local and national awards, including an Inc. 500 honor. In addition to overseeing the management of the company, strategic development, and business development, he has remained a key member of the audit leadership team. John has also received many well-deserved accolades for both his work and his commitment to community service. He received his bachelor's degree from Emory University and his master's degree from the Owen Graduate School of Business at Vanderbilt University. He is a CPA licensed in Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, and Washington, D.C. He's a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Tennessee Society of Certified Public Accountants. He was appointed to the Tennessee Education Lottery Board of Directors by Governor Lee in 2019 and was elected vice chair of the board in 2021. And as I found out not too long ago when Mr. Crosland was in the office, he is the son-in-law of a good friend of mine back in Morristown and one of my breakfast buddies that we go to. So I was proud to find that out. So it's an honor for me to introduce to you and move the HJR 760.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, we will go out of session and hear from Mr. Crosland. Would you push your button?
There should be a red button there with a.
There we go. Does that work?
That's good.
Okay. This is John Crosland, and I appreciate you seeing me today. I've been on the lottery board. This would be my second time to be confirmed if I was so lucky to be so. It's been about 4 years on the board. I am vice chair. My experience with the lottery board has been fantastic. The staff of the lottery does some really great things. The lottery, as you know, we're just past $7 billion raised. I think over 2 million kids have received money for higher education. The stats go on. And I feel very fortunate to be part of the board. As As you probably heard, I'm more the numbers guy. We got some attorneys, we got various other people on the board, but as a CPA, I serve my role and I'm proud to do it. And I would feel very fortunate if you guys would approve me for another term.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Crossland, thank you all for what you do. Did you say that it's 7 billion? Did I
correct.
understand you?
That's correct.
7 billion.
7
That
billion.
is absolutely
Over
amazing.
20 years. Yeah.
Over 20 years.
Just past our
And,
20-year,
and how many students?
200 million. Is that right?
No.
200.
Two,
Do I say 2 million?
2 million
I said
students.
200. 2 million.
That, again, that is absolutely amazing. And I think we have one of the best lotteries in the nation.
Yes.
I like to think that we have a wonderful, a question in reference to the responsibility of the board. When it comes to, I guess, deciding which lotteries that we will participate in, do the board approve of which lotteries that we will do, tickets?
Yeah, I mean, the management comes up with what, if you're looking at the scratch off
Right.
tickets or,
Oh.
yeah, I've been amazed how innovative they are coming up with different games that come out, and certain games are retired over time and new ones are brought in. And, that's primarily at the staff level.
Okay,
If
good.
you know Rebecca, she's an expert on that area, but the board does oversee, I mean, everything that happens. And so those are typical things that we would talk about in the board meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Chairman Holsclaw.
Thank you, Chairman. How many board members are there?
There's 6 right now.
Okay.
7 would be, I think, a full slate.
What's the most significant thing that you've learned being on the board?
The most significant thing I've learned is how much money goes to individual students over that 20-year period. I didn't realize. I mean, he's shocked at those big numbers. I'm just as shocked when I came on the board, seeing all those numbers, and learning about how there's no tax. These are individuals playing games at their own discretion, and that money filtering straight down to the state and passed on to students. Just the sheer magnitude of it was amazing to me. I would say the second thing is I'd heard of our CEO, Rebecca. I'd heard of her reputation as being an authority in the lottery, but I didn't quite realize that she's probably considered the world's best and chair of the World Lottery Committee board. And so I think Tennessee's in a very unique situation and to have the most successful lottery. I feel like we're kind of the leader in the country on lotteries.
Appreciate your service. Thanks, Chairman.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Crossland, for coming. A couple of questions. Can you tell us more about your responsibility as vice chairman of the board, sort of what that is?
right.
And the second thing is the diversity of the board members. You said there are 6 members. How many of them identify as Black, African American, Latino, Hispanic?
We have one individual from Shelby County that is African American. And speaking for diversity, and we have 2 females, and then we have three other males. But if you look at our executive leadership team, of probably the top 5 biggest positions, 3 of them are African Americans. We have a minority participation, I think, requirement of about 15% for our major vendors. And one of our first committee of the day is our minority participation committee. I'm not on that committee because I chair the audit committee,
Okay.
and then I'm vice chair. So that committee ensures that our largest vendors have at least a 15% participation, minority participation. And I think we were around 20% last year. So it's very important to our management. It's very important to our board. So it's a great question.
Representative Pearson.
Yep. And just as the vice chairman of the board, what do you view as sort of your responsibilities?
As my primarily responsibility is really the audit committee chair, and that's mainly what I report. But then I can't vote in the finance committee, which is the next, we all meet as a finance committee, all 6 of us. I'm not a voting member because I'm chair of the audit committee, but my role in the finance committee, and therefore really vice chair is really any role of a vice chair. I mean, Will runs the meetings and the board chair, but if he is kind of like the vice president, if he's not there, I'm next up to run the board meetings, to ensure that all the other committees, the finance committee, the minority participation, the audit committee, are all running on time smoothly and operating as they should.
Thank you, Mr. Crossland. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? I see none. Thank you, Mr. Crossland. Appreciate you
Thank you.
coming before us.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Is there objection to the question? I see. Let's go back in session. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 760 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 760 goes to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. That was HJR 760 and rolling out to calendar and rules. Next up is HJR 761 by Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Chairman. It is an honor to introduce to you all Mr. William J. Carver. He's with the law firm in Knoxville, Tennessee. He is an AV-rated, extremely knowledgeable, experienced, and hardworking litigation attorney who values the relationships he builds with his clients and their businesses. His primary areas of practice are litigation, employment and labor, and local government and public utilities. He serves as city attorney for the city of Townsend, Tennessee. In August of 2013, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam appointed Mr. Carver to serve on the Tennessee Education Lottery Board of Directors. And Governor Bill Lee appointed Mr. Carver to a second 5-year term expiring in 2023. He became chair of the board in 2021. Legal Aid of East Tennessee selected Mr. Carver and one other attorney to receive its 2010 Pro Bono Partner Award for his role in establishing a Saturday bar clinic in Blount County, Tennessee. He has successfully handled cases in both state and federal courts throughout Tennessee involving the publishing industry, software industry, shipping industry, aircraft industry, music industry, construction trades, banking industry, manufacturing industry, government contractors, insurance coverage disputes, and retail businesses. Wow, I think he's very well qualified. So I just want to say it is an honor for me to introduce to you Mr. William J. Carver and move the HJR 761.
Thank you, Representative Carringer, and we're going to go out of session to hear from Mr. Carver.
Thank you, committee, for having Mr. Crossland.
Make sure his mic's on.
Will Carver, sorry, they told me there was going to be a red light on, and there is a red light on here. It's just the wrong red light, apparently. Will Carver, thank you all for having Mr. Crossland and me here today. Appreciate Governor Haslam and Governor Lee appointing me to the lottery board. I have been on the board for 10 plus years now. To hear some of those numbers Mr. Crossland cited about how much money the lottery has raised and the number of students and families that the Lottery for Education proceeds have impacted is just tremendous. Rebecca Paul, our CEO, at a corporate reception a couple of weeks ago, recognizing our 20th year anniversary, she made the observation that 2 million students helped. That's filling Neyland Stadium 20 times, which is a pretty remarkable analogy. So thank you all for the opportunity to serve, and thank those of you. I know Representative Miller was around when the enabling legislation was passed. So quite a legacy that this legislature has put in place for the students and the people of Tennessee.
Excuse me, I'm telling you to turn a light on. I hadn't got mine on. Is there any questions from the committee? First, I saw Chairman Holtzclaw down there.
Thank you, Chairman. And I reckon being with your experience on the board, what would you consider the major improvements from when you started till today?
The major
Improvements?
I think that we've done a couple of things internally. We have worked better to ensure some succession planning within the organization, which was important. We have a great history of employee retention. At our 20th anniversary, we had, I think, 8 or 9 individuals that have been with us from the start, which is great, but you also have to think about succession planning. Tennessee Promise came along during the time I was on the board. I was thankful that Governor Haslam and the legislature had the vision to take those surplus funds and create the Tennessee Promise program, because just a complete game changer for students in Tennessee. 4-year college is great, but to be able to go to a 2-year school, a technical school, and come out with no debt, and maybe at 20 years old or 21 years old, have a little bit better idea about what you want to do in the future. I think Tennessee Promise will be one of the greatest legacies of the lottery because of the breadth of people it touches.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you all for what you do. Mr. Crossland, I didn't answer the question, but he mentioned that Ms. Rebecca Paul, was on a world committee. What committee is that exactly?
So Rebecca Paul, who's the CEO of the Lottery Corporation, was selected, I think it was 4 years ago now. She's now served 2 terms because of COVID as the president of the World Lottery Association. She was the first female to ever serve in that role. Her term expires later this year, but to think that the Tennessee Education Lottery CEO is leading the World Lottery Organization, which is the foremost lottery organization in the world. That's pretty remarkable that she's now had a 20+ year career with our lottery and has been recognized internationally for her contributions.
That is amazing. And our lottery, we're part of a multi-state lottery. In order to become a member of that, would she have to come to you and get the approval of the board before she could join something like that?
That is correct.
Okay,
The board does
okay.
approve that. And then we also, when it comes to the multi-state games and the instant tickets, the scratch-off tickets, there are certain rules that apply to each of those games that the board also approves those rules.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Carver. You mentioned succession planning. When thinking about the board, you've now served over 10 years, a little bit over half of the organization's life. How are you thinking about leadership for the lottery and the board moving forward?
That's a great question. We talked with the governor's office today. We have 1 vacancy currently. We have 2 more whose terms will end in June of this year. And I think that we need to be very intentional as we think through that about ensuring diversity in all forms and making sure that that's skill sets, that's racial, gender, geographic diversity, making sure that that is representative of the state of Tennessee and that we have the people in place who can continue to lead the organization successfully in the future.
Representative.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that answer. You mentioned the 2 million students. So we have, which is an amazing figure. So 2 million students have received funding from the lottery. Does that mean 2 million we can also say that 2 million students have an associate's degree or bachelor's degree over the last 20 years?
That is a good question, and I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know if that is a number of people who have just received the funds, but maybe they didn't complete that degree.
Mhm.
But those are students who hopefully had an opportunity to choose to pursue an associate's degree, a technical degree, or a four-year degree that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have
Sure.
because of that. But I don't know the retention rates, but certainly if that's information you'd like to have, we can see about getting that to you later.
Representative?
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Chairman. I would love that information. I'm sure the other members on the committee would almost, if we could get a breakdown by district to see how folks in our districts are doing and how much funding is going into different areas. I imagine populaces that have colleges or universities will probably have students who are matriculating that way. I think it is an important question to know the answer to because $7 billion is a whole lot of money that you all have responsibility for, that Mr. Crossland talked about having a fiduciary responsibility over. But if it's leading to people going to college and they're not completing, then we're not getting 2 million more Tennesseans with higher education, whether that be at the trade schools or in the universities, back into our state to contribute in ways that we would want for them to. And it's not, to your point, dollars wasted for someone to have had the experience to go to college. But it is also very important that if we're going to build a strong workforce, if we're going to have an educated workforce, that we ensure that they actually have the resources to complete college and university if that's what they desire. And so that breakdown would be really helpful about the number of students who've received funding from the Tennessee Lottery or the Tennessee Promise scholarships and how many actually matriculated all the way through.
And I appreciate that observation, and I agree. Every year, a representative, I believe it's from TSAC, I may have the organization wrong, comes and presents to the board about some of those numbers and some of that information. And I live in Blount County, and I know every year I have them provide me with some numbers specific to Blount County
Sure.
because I speak to like the Leadership Blount program, and they always like to have some of those anecdotal numbers about the impact on Blount County specifically. So I think that data and information is available through TSAC, and certainly if there's anything I can do to help you get that information, I'm happy to do it.
Any further?
Thank you, Chairman. Would be happy to have that information. And I know a few representatives who would love to go back into their districts and share similar ways that you do with Blount County.
I'm
Thank you,
sure.
Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. Is there any further discussion? Motion has been called. We're voting. All in favor of HJR 761, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. You're headed, that's headed out to calendar and rules, Representative Carringer. Let's see, item number 3, 707 is off notice. And we've got a request to kind of flip the calendar a little bit. And Representative Reedy, are you okay with that? All right, sir. Good deal. Next up is item number 5, House Bill 1651 by Chairman Whitson. We have a motion and a second. And Chairman, you're recognized. Make sure your mic's on.
There you go. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This legislation will temporarily open the window to allow community organizations the opportunity to have their application for charitable events to be renewed and considered, reviewed and considered for approval by the Secretary of State. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
All right, you've heard an explanation of the bill. Does anyone have any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, sorry, Representative McCallum.
Thank you, Chairman, and I would like to thank my dear friend from Williamson County for bringing this bill. It's going to do a lot of good and for the Rotarians and what they do for the community. So thank you for bringing this bill, sir.
All right.
Thank you,
Chairman.
and I appreciate you being my co-sponsor.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. We're going to be voting on House Bill 1651. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving out to Finance, Ways and Means.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to back up to item number 4, HJR 689 by Representative Reedy. We have a motion and a second. Representative, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is a history lesson for me, and I am presenting that to you now as an urging resolution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution reads, "The Congress shall have the power to declare war." The framers vested the power to declare war in the United States Congress. They did this deliberately, specifically prohibiting the president from declaring war, and for good reason. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, the Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, repeal invasion. That's it. These three things only to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repeal invasions. So Congress declares the war, the president executes it. The president commands the Army and Navy and the militia. The Constitution provides for the calling forth of the militia for the three things. The U.S. has not declared war since 1942, when President Franklin Roosevelt asked for the declaration of war from Congress on Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. He asked for this declaration because he believed it improper to engage in hostilities against a country without a formal war declaration. As everyone knows, the U.S. has executed wars without the constitutionality required declaration many times since 1942. Two of the most recent of these wars were in Iraq and Afghanistan, which Tennessee Guardsmen participated in. House Joint Resolution 689 is a resolution to urge the United States Congress to keep the power to declare war and for the National Guard to be protected from the executive branch. With that, I'll take questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we do have a question. Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. One is, so when Congress in the early 2000s through the Patriot Act gave the president the authority, you would say that was unconstitutional?
Right there, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, many times right now, we're allowing our congressmen are abdicating to the executive branch and let the executive branch or the bureaucrats to lead our country. And my challenge is if it's in the Constitution, yes, the Wars Act and everything else, they're writing a piece of paper and sending it off, and it limits, we're a 10th Amendment state. With that, the commander-in-chief of our military forces with the National Guard, in my opinion, goes with governors, whoever the governor is at the time. And with that, because of the federal regulation, at any time, we're just saying, okay, Mr. President, you can do whatever with our National Guard troops. And it's not just Tennessee, it's across the nation. Yes, sir.
Chairman Jernigan?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when they did the War Powers Act of 73, it made it clear that Congress declares war, and they did authorize the president to act within a certain amount of time before coming back to them to declare war. But my question was do you consider the Patriot Act resolution that Congress passed unconstitutional?
I do.
Okay. Well, and you've quoted the founding fathers, in which I would have to say at the time was when we had militias. And Jefferson and Washington were scared to death of a standing army. European governments fell from standing armies during peacetime. And Jefferson even reduced our army down to around 3,000. And right there at the turn of the century in 1801. What happened, though, was when we declared war in 1812, was the British invaded. They went to New York. They burned down the White House. You know who didn't show up was the militia. So from that point on, we've had a standing army. that the executive is in charge of. The quotes that you've had was really meant for militia and not for a standing army. I think that they made it very clear in the Powers Act of 73 to give some leeway to the president before coming back to Congress. And if Congress at any time, both parties that are there can declare war if they would like. They've just chosen not to do so. And so I just want to make sure that the goal that you're trying to say is that their actions, when they authorize the president to do something, is unconstitutional, and that you would urge them to declare war before any president can take action without be nullifying the 73 War Powers Act at that point? Or do you think they should have some leeway before coming back to Congress and asking for war?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
I believe the many wars that we have been into since, we should have a little more conversation. And what I mean by conversation, those elected officials we send to Washington, D.C. should have more conversation. And of course, what just took place with Iran, it's right now the president's trying to make a decision on how to retaliate because of the killing and wounding of our troops. Do we jump headlong into battle, or should Congress be part of this conversation? And right now, it's just the executive branch deciding what to do. So I understand the struggle with the conversation, but there's so many things that our elected officials, in my opinion, they wash aside and just leave it, like I said, to the departments, agencies, or to the executive branch in Washington, D.C. And that's why we're $32 trillion in debt.
Well, and
Chairman, go ahead.
And I get that, but the War Powers Act gives him the authority to act on this in real time. And then if we commit troops, then they come back to Congress. Now, I will be first to admit that Congress has failed on many levels of exercising the power that they have. And that's something that should be addressed, but they have the power to do that. But tying the president's hands when he needs to act in real time in the war in the present day. And man, I'm with you on the Afghanistan, when we went in, especially into Iraq, there was no weapons of mass destruction. The intelligence community failed, and Congress was acting on bad information, but it was a knee-jerk reaction to 9/11. So the only concern I have is that under the War Powers Act, the president can act in real time to do what he needs to do to safeguard the security of the nation and Congress has given him the authority to do that. And so that's the only concern I have with probably tying the executive's hands at that moment. But thank you for letting me speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. And sponsor, I agree with you that there needs to be much more consideration and deliberation before the United States is engaged in war. I am not a fan of us being in war and the consequences therein, the thousands of lives, the communities that get devastated, whether it be drone strikes or ground troops, the risk that families take. You know, my granddaddy served in Vietnam. My uncle was in the Army. My cousin in the Air Force. The risk that our service members take does need more conversation for sure. And we need to prevent war, right? I think that's a famous Dwight Eisenhower quote, as he was told, you didn't have war during your entire presidential administration. And he told them to go to war is easy, to not go to war is difficult. And so we share a similar sentiment on that. That being said, I do not believe this resolution from the Tennessee General Assembly is the right move, and that's for a couple of reasons. My colleague mentioned the War Powers Act. Presidents have also been acting under the authorization of the use of military force. Has that been turned and twisted in so many ways to be engaged in conflicts that I don't think many of us would want for us to be engaged in, yes, but that does exist. And if it is the executive that you are seeking to take power away from, I think the beautiful thing about the co-equal branches of government is the president may be able to direct the troops, but not without resources and money, and that is appropriated by our U.S. Congress people. And so if the goal is to prevent money from going to war and to ending the congressional military industrial complex, which I'm all for, I believe the effort should be toward the legislature, our United States Congress, which is giving money and funding these wars as well. And then you have folks who are going to argue, well, you don't care about the troops and things like that. And so I'll give those people to you to handle. But the reality is the industry of the congressional military industrial complex is problematic. And if we do not address the funding that we are giving the president and the president's past to have these wars, I don't think we're going to have a meaningful resolution to this. The second trouble that I have here is in your resolution at the very bottom, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the state of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we hereby urge the United States Congress to keep the power to declare war and for the National Guard to be protected from executive power. Particularly this last point troubles me. Reading documents of Thomas Jefferson and all those, Alexander Hamilton, I was relatively okay. But the idea that we would take away the presidential power to nationalize the National Guard is deeply troubling and concerning, particularly because in our history, and we know this, the Little Rock Nine, we had a segregationist, racist governor who was refusing to allow children to go to school, to integrate them. And it wasn't until the president of the United States actually had the National Guard to escort them in that they were allowed to be able to enter into the school. That power, I believe, is really important for the president to have and for governors to have in case of emergency. And so taking away the executive power at the federal level, you also have to consider what that would look like taking away the power at the state level. And so for these reasons, while I understand the sentiment, I do believe this is misdirected. And so I won't be able to support it.
All right. Is there any other member have questions of the sponsor? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting on HJR 689. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Roll call. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot distinguish the number of ayes and noes, so if the clerk would, please take the roll.
Representative Alexander. Alexander votes aye. Representative Bricken. Representative Butler. Butler votes aye. Representative Carringer.
Aye.
Carringer votes aye. Representative Chisholm. Chisholm votes no. Representative Dixie. Dixie votes no. Representative Haston. Haston votes aye. Representative Holsclaw. Holsclaw votes aye. Representative Hurt. Hurt votes aye. Representative Jernigan. Jernigan votes no. Representative Johnson. Johnson votes aye. Representative Leatherwood. Leatherwood votes aye. Representative Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Representative McCalman. McCalman votes aye. Representative Miller. Miller votes no. Representative Pearson.
No.
Pearson votes no. Representative Powell. Representative Powers. Powers votes aye. Representative Rudder. Representative Terry. Terry votes aye. Vice Chairman Eldridge.
Aye.
Eldridge votes aye.
All right. Representative, or Chair Lady Rudder wishes to be recognized as an aye,
Rudder
And-
votes aye.
and then Representative Bricken.
Bricken votes aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we have 15 ayes, 5 noes.
The HJR moves forward, goes out to calendar and rules. Before we bring up our next bill, Representative Butler, did you have a request?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to recognize Nikita Clark and her mom and grandmother out here. They are actually Chairman Kiesling's constituents, but we share Fentress County. So I wanted to recognize them. She was a page on the floor this morning, and they're in committee with us today.
Thank you. Glad to have you with us. Next up is item number 6, House Bill 1170 by Representative Akeem. We need a motion. You have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Representative Akeem, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. What this bill does is requires the Tennessee Peace Officers Standards and Training Post Commission to adopt guidelines and materials instructing law enforcement officers on the best practices for recognizing and responding to a medical crisis involving a person under arrest or under the care or supervision of a law enforcement officers. Now, what was not being required is that this becomes a part of the post-certification for officers. The intent, the desire is for officers to have additional training that would allow them to be able to recognize persons being in a medical crisis, and so that help could be provided to them. And we could, if there are examples that you would like to hear about, we're more than willing to do that. If there are questions, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for that. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Is there any questions for Representative Akeem? Question has been called on the bill. We're voting. All in favor of, go back over here, HB 1170, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Sir, you move out to calendar and rules.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you. Item number 7 has been requested to be rolled. However, this is the third time the bill has been calendared in this committee. So without objection, the bill is sent to the special calendar to be heard with the final calendar. Next up is item number 8 by, it's House Bill 1708 by Representative McCallum. We have a motion and a second. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I will keep this brief. This bill is from the Secretary of State's office. It does 3 things. First, Secretary of State's office has effectively run the Charitable Organizations Division that oversees the Charitable Solicitations Act. With this, efficiency has come as a surplus that has allowed the legislature to reduce annual fees that charities pay in the past year. This bill will extend the reduction for an additional year, collectively saving charities almost $2 million during the next fiscal year. Second, it raises from $500,000 in gross revenue to $1 million in gross revenue, the level at which a charitable entity must file audited financial statements with the Secretary of State's office. This amount has not been increased since 2007 and is still at the lower end of other states that have similar requirements. Finally, it clarifies that professional solicitors are not exempt from late fees related to their annual support. And I am proud that the Tennessee Nonprofit Network is in support of this as well. So with that, I stand ready for questions.
Sir, any questions for the sponsor? Any questions been called? We're voting on House Bill 1708. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Sir, you move out to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And next up is item number 9, House Bill 1707, also by Representative McCallum. We have a motion and a second. Representative, you're recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Members, another bill from the Secretary of State's office. It's predominantly a cleanup bill for the Charitable Solicitations Act. It's the first substantial cleanup bill since 2007. This bill moves all definitions in the act to the correct section, gets rid of redundant filings, and clarifies the scope of the Secretary's rulemaking authority. In addition to the cleanup, the bill will allow the Secretary of State to administratively prohibit a charitable organization from soliciting funds during an official investigation instead of having the Attorney General rush to court to obtain an injunction. It also clarifies the Secretary of State has discretion instead of requiring the Secretary to impose civil penalties for violations of the Charitable Solicitations Act. This allows the Secretary of State to help organizations get back into compliance rather than insisting on civil penalties. That I stand ready for questions.
Any questions for the sponsor? Question has been called on the bill. We're voting on House Bill 1707. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Your bill moves out to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
And that, folks, I believe brings us to the end of our calendar. And is there a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.